Disco. When I say that word, what do you think? What comes to mind for you when I say disco? For me, I was a child during the disco era. So I was a disco baby, I called myself. I loved disco, went to disco dances, watched Dance Fever, watched Soul Train. I was a big disco. My mother's in disco. I loved disco. The first album I ever bought was this one right here, Sunday Fever soundtrack. This is from 1977 with the whole thing in here. It's the original album. I have it with in here. I thought I'd check it out. I'm using it. The disco sleeve, but back when albums had all kinds of stuff, the album stuff. Obviously, the biggest album of the era, the Sunday Fever soundtrack by the Bee Gees. I decided to go a little light today. My last couple episodes were very serious, so I thought let's do It's a Lot to Love Disco. Disco was in my life as long as I can remember. I was a kid and my mother played music, my father played music, my older siblings, everybody played music. My music was big in our house, in our car, in our family, everybody had music. I remember my summers. Well, actually, first I remember my school time, usually in the spring to summer when school was in, we used to have after school dances. They were disco dances at school. They were supervised and everything. And I used to watch Soul Train. I used to watch all the disco shows and learn all. Me and my cousin Bobby would learn all the dances: the cowboy, the freak, the worm, the bump, the hustle, of course, and many others. And we would do. I'd be one of the best dancers. I was always a dancer, and I was always into it. I liked the beats. It was upbeat music. It was usually happy music. My mother's a huge Donna Summer fan, which it was very nice for me. I was able to give her an autograph picture of Donna Summer before she died, before Donna Summer died, my mother, I was still here. It was so much fun. Disco was fun. It was 120 beats per minute, 118 beats per minute. It was happy music sung by a lot of people who were black and brown, which I liked. But then the white folks came in, of course, and the grannies and the grandmothers and the kids. There was so much. The disco exploded. I remember it was on TV. It was everywhere. I remember Ethel Merman's disco album. I remember Disco Duck. I remember Kiss's disco album. I was made for loving you, babe. That album was disco. Do You Think I'm Sexy by Rod Stewart. I remember hearing that. I remember K-Tel. I don't know if you guys remember K-Tel, but K-Tel was this like record company that did compilations of the hits of the day and commercials. I remember Blondie doing disco, Heart of Glass. That high voice. I can't even do the high voice. But all of that, hearing the first disco rap song, you know what rap was, hip hop, hip hop, and I didn't even know what the rappers were like. We didn't know what that was. I remember hearing that. I just remember I have a very fond memory of the 70s. And I as a kid, I mean, it was grittier. I remember growing up, it was grittier. We weren't rich or anything. We live in rich places or big places. It just seemed a little rougher, fighting for gas. I don't know if we still do that now. It was the bell bottoms, it was the fros, it was the dashikis, it was the wide collar shirts. I don't know. I mean, the platform shoes. I was skating everywhere. I used to disco skate all the time. I used to love that. I don't know, just the time, the shows. I mean, like I said, we used to watch Dance Fever with Danny Terrio, who, of course, helped John Travolta dance, Sunday Fever. And I remember wanting to be like John Travolta. I wanted to be Tony, but I wanted to be him. I didn't care what he looked like. I just wanted to be him. He was so cool, and he ruled the dance floor. Everybody, men and women, were just like, who is that? And he ruled the dance floor. I love that. It was such a I have such warm feelings about that time period. And when I hear disco, I get that all. I have warm feelings about that. I started collecting records after I bought this and a few other records, and started collecting records, actually collecting them. So that led me into the 80s and 90s, 2000s, collecting records. I completely love music, and I think upbeat, fun dance music is something that I produce now. I have some disco records I've done, disco-esque records that I've done personally. You go to my SoundCloud page, you can hear it. But I just my SoundCloud page is James Lott Jr., just so you know that. So you go to soundcloud.com/James Lott Jr. But no, I have a very I like all kinds of music, but I think my favorite must be disco, and then maybe rock, my second favorite. But I just there's something about disco. Yes, some of the songs were nameless, faceless voices, just set to strings and drums, which in some cases I like that also. Just something in the background, you know, in the background just kind of transforms you to another time period. This is I'm not talking high energy music came in the 80s. We're not talking techno. That's all later. Even though, as you know, I Feel Loved by Donna Summer and Giorgio Moroder is the grandmother of techno. That song was like nothing else you ever heard. I remember that too. So it's kind of crazy. But there were a lot of, you know, disco acts that just, you know, didn't go anywhere. They had a few hits here and there, and that's it. But it's just like, I love it. And every once in a while I go back to it. I would love to do an all kind of disco-esque album one day. That's one of my dreams. To kind of do. I've done some disco songs, some house music songs that house came later. Another genre dance I love. But disco, and okay, yes, it got cheesy and everybody was doing disco, but a lot of them, I liked it. Okay, Rolling Stones did disco. I mean, everybody did disco. Why did disco? Why not? Diana Ross, Love Hangover, great song. And you know, and because speaking of like Donna Ross, Donna Summer, Chic, there's some folks in disco that were doing amazing stuff that influenced other records. If there was no Chic, there would have been Madonna's Like a Virgin would have happened. You know, it's like there's some direct correlations and stuff. And because of the disco sucks and they got rid of it or whatever, it kind of went out. But genres, sometimes some genres they go out. I have my own feelings about why it went out, but it still lives on, and there's still disco records out there. This may be under different names. Excuse my water, just water. It's dry. Other names, it may have other faces on it, but it's still there. There are folks around the world who still love disco. In some countries, disco never died, like it did in America, kind of. But yes, I've had the pleasure. My first songs, I Am Ready. My song, I Just Want to Break Out. A few of some of my first songs were actually disco-esque songs. So I just kind of, yes, I love it. But I will always have an affection for a Saturday Night Fever soundtrack of the Bee Gees. Always, always. So someone asked me the other day, what's my favorite song from this album? I have to say, I think it's Night Fever. They're More Than a Woman. They're Disco Inferno. Then If I Can't Have You. I mean, they're all good songs. They're all good songs. Thanks for being a Patreon subscriber. That's why you get this 21st episode of It's a Lot with James Lott Jr. That I do exclusively only on here. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues. You want to know about James Lott Jr. and he's talking about? Come here. Any amount, any tier unlocks this show. It's for all of you Lotties who follow me on here. I really appreciate you guys spending your hard-earned money on my product. I think my product is worth it, and that really means a lot to me personally. It means a lot to me also, and that's why I try to give you something almost every single day. I'm like, here, I'm working for you. What do you want? Here we go. I'm just gonna give it to you. So I appreciate that. Another episode's coming soon. Thank you so much. It's a lot. I'm a lot. You're a lot too, I guess.